Can everyone hear me? All right, great. My name is Andrea Berry, and first of all, thank you all for being here. Just a little bit about me. I'm an Associate Communications Manager at Kroger. My focus is on digital communications, so I work on enterprise social networking and our intranet strategy. So both projects are really exciting, but today I'm just going to focus on the former. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're doing enterprise social networking, why it's important for our business, and also how we got over the resistance to make it happen. And I hope that by learning about our journey, you'll find ways that it will apply to your own. Then my colleague Dustin is going to talk more about the technical aspects of our integration with SharePoint and how we've actually made history in the process of deploying Yammer by making every one of our 340,000 associates digital citizens at Kroger. So first I'll start with a brief history of Kroger, because I think in order to understand how big of a revolution we're actually talking about, it helps to understand a little bit more about where we're coming from. So Kroger's actually been around for over 100 years, and we've innovated throughout history with our main goal, though, being to delight our customers with service, selection, and value. So it all began back in 1883 when a man named Barney Kroger, who was actually one of 10 children born to German immigrants in Cincinnati, and a man with big dreams, invested his life savings of a whopping $372 to open a grocery store. So Barney, which we can call him that now, ran his new business with a single motto: be particular and never sell anything you wouldn't want yourself. And as he grew too, Barney was always on the lookout for innovations in products and process, as we are still today. And one thing that he did that I thought was really cool to point out was he looked around in the early 1900s and he saw that most grocers were buying their bread from bakers. And he thought, well, hey, I can better control the quality and reduce the price if I bake it myself. And that's how we now have corporate brands. So as a result of this innovation, Kroger now operates 40 plants, and we make thousands of our own products. But even beyond innovation in products, Kroger has also been a pioneer by being the first retail grocery to monitor product quality and test foods offered to our customers. We were also the first to formalize consumer research, and now we have a partnership with dunnhumby USA, so we really are able to know our customers very well, what they want, and how to stay relevant to better meet their needs. So the point of all that is really just to let you know we've come a long way since 1883, but we still deliver good service, selection, and value. And kind of, in my opinion, I think of Kroger almost as the GE of the grocery business. We're certainly not a flash in the pan. We're not the latest supermarket out there. But when you peel back all of the layers, you can see what an exceptional value Kroger offers. So today, Kroger's a $90 billion company. Earnings have risen 40% in the past 5 years. Dividends have doubled, and we've posted 35 consecutive quarters of identical sales growth. We do operate nearly 2,500 stores in 31 states. We also have about 800 convenience stores, 350 fine jewelry stores, and like I said, 40 manufacturing plants. And to top it all off, our associate population has grown to more than 340,000. So, why enterprise social networking? Even our cows at our Turkey Hill dairy want to know. So we know our customers very well, and we want to know our associates just as well. And with a company as large as ours, that's grown in part through merger and acquisition, this becomes a big challenge. So what's the best answer? We've always had one-way traditional corporate communications, and so the message is packaged and it's delivered to our associates, but there hasn't been a formal channel for them to talk back. And we really want to hear their voice, and we want to also enable them to share their ideas, because we know that they're valuable, since throughout history, our associates have actually given us a competitive edge time and time again. And also, further, we are a grassroots organization, so the magic is happening in the stores. It's the associates in our stores that are closest to our customers every day. So we want a channel where they're enabled to connect not just to executives and management, but also to each other. So from peer-to-peer across all levels of the organization. And this is how we believe we can better leverage the collective intelligence of our entire company. So why is that important? Well, as HP's former CEO Lou Platt is famously quoted as saying, if HP knew what HP knows, HP would be 3 times more profitable. And I think he's right. How do I know? Well, I would say if HP knew what HP knew back in 1976, they would not have let Steve Wozniak walk away with his designs for the Apple II. So I actually love this story, and I just wanted to share it with you, knowing that many of you are from the tech industry. So Steve, who considered himself this great company man at HP, he went to his bosses in 1976, and he said, here are the designs that I've done while I've been working for you, so, do you want them? Because he thought that that was the right thing to do. So the senior executives looked at Steve and they said, meh, this is a hobbyist thing, so it's not something that we want to actually develop. So I think, maybe Platt had Wozniak in mind when he actually made that quote. Who knows? Also, too, recent McKinsey studies on how organizations use social technologies also point to the importance of knowing what we know. And in 2011, 74% of respondents to their survey said that speed of access to knowledge increased measurably with the use of social technologies inside the organization. So for Kroger, our vision is to create an enterprise social network, which is a single place for associates to connect, collaborate, and share ideas. And in doing this, we're not only giving our associates a voice, we're also creating, in a way, a structured stream of consciousness for the organization. And this isn't something that we can get through email or a suggestion box. And also, too, because these conversations and these connections are archivable and searchable, we're enabling discovery across all levels of the organization and across time and space. So additionally, too, we know that associates are already using Facebook and Twitter to talk and to have conversations. This can actually be pretty confusing for our customers because sometimes they'll be posting about the health challenges that we have going on, and a customer will say on Facebook, oh, that sounds great, I would like to be part of that. And then they have to respond and say, sorry, you can't. This is just for us. So we really want to bring all of that in-house. I've already talked about breaking down geographic and functional silos, but again, that's really important for us since we've grown so much through our mergers and our acquisitions. Next, really empowering associates to be creative and share ideas. So while we do have a defined taxonomy and a group structure for our network, we also do enable associates to still create their own groups, so they can still share organically. And one group that sprung up that we love, but that we didn't plan for, was actually the Excel Power Users group. So an associate from Ralph started it, and they've since been really collaborating about the best rounding formulas. So this isn't something that we would have run in our associate newsletter or our traditional corporate channels, but it's certainly something that is good to communicate about and to have thrive. Finally, too, we also want to reduce email. So I'm certainly not going to stand up here and say that I believe email will suddenly go away. There's still a good use case for it, and actually, as I was watching SPC TV this morning, there was a really good conversation in there about it. And I think it was Dux or it was someone else who was saying, we all know now when we would use the phone versus when we would use email versus when we would use IM. And soon we're all going to know when to use social networking versus email as well. And it may be a little overwhelming at first, but this becomes natural as we just get used to it. So really, when I'm talking to our audiences at Kroger, my conversation with them is really about the value of sharing more broadly and kind of making a point to think before sending off an email. Ask yourself, would this question and the answer that I expect to receive be valuable to others? So if it is, then go to our network and actually post it there. So you probably can see me in the back there. This is an actual reenactment of the battle that we fought to get business social networking or enterprise social networking at Kroger. That's me in the back with the red lightsaber. But really, it's not an easy journey when you're trying to affect change. So to help us tell the story about value, not only did we form an executive steering committee and arm them with lightsabers, But we also talked a lot about how to align social strategy to the business strategy. The other thing we did to really overcome resistance and try to understand the audience and what their objections were was really to empathize with them. I would highly stress the importance of not alienating your audience. So I focused more on bringing them along on our journey and using what we call at Kroger the velvet touch. That seems to be more effective in our organization than lightsabers. Also, too, social is a word that we had to overcome. So in our organization, as I'm sure is the case in yours, social is kind of a bad word. It's associated with frivolousness. So overcoming that was part of our journey as well. The other thing that we used to help overcome resistance was a bit of humor. So I think this goes a long way to kind of lightening tension, especially when things get a little political. So I'd say if you're comfortable with it, use it. And one thing I like to do personally was to look back in time and remember the introduction of a little thing called email. So let's take a trip back to 1994.
My father used to say that he started Gramercy Press so that the written word would always have a home. And that mission hasn't changed. But it's 1994, and the era of Charles Dickens is over. We use computers, and we still mail manuscripts around the world. Curtis still prints a catalog every quarter and drops them in the mailbox. And our most advanced form of communication is Darlene's lovely little message slips. We've been talking to MCI, and this is not about the phone bill, but we're going to make some changes. Not in our ideals, but in the tools that we use.
Everybody had an opinion.
I think it's a great idea. We are finally waking up.
What's wrong with Charles Dickens?
It's appropriate. Art is constant. Tools change.
Digital technology is the future. Whether you're selling books or bagels.
The fact was, Peter had big plans that would change the way everybody did everything around here.
Come in.
Hi. You wanted to see me about something?
Darlene, where are my messages? Did I get any messages?
Oh, sure. They're on your email.
Email? Oh, I want paper.
Well, just print them out. They're right there on your email.
Would Dickens use email? Would Fitzgerald? Would Shakespeare use email?
Well, they would now.
Look, I started doing...
Okay. So for some of you, that might bring back some memories. But the other thing, too, was our CEO would often tell the story about how when he first sent out his first email, he sent it out to some of the executives at the company, and he told them that the speed with which they responded to the email would be reflected in their bonus for the year. And it took actually about 4 weeks for anybody to respond. So, it's just a matter of making that change happen. But so again, like I said, we really focus on aligning social goals to business goals. And another tool that I used to help groups get to this point was putting them through a business assessment. And what that was is essentially a questionnaire that I would talk through with them and help them really think about why they were doing it. And some, actually needed it more than others. But basically what it accomplished was helping teams understand that social in the enterprise isn't the same as social in the consumer realm. So, Yammer isn't Facebook, and that kind of conversation. So we also focus, too, on not actually duplicating existing channels, but, enhancing them or replacing them. And also, too, what one team saw as their goal for using Yammer actually didn't apply to others. So one size doesn't fit all. For instance, our corporate brands group and our Simple Truth Organic group have a goal around educating associates around products. But our Michigan division group is more focused on engagement and increasing sales. So the conversations in those two different groups align to those goals, but they are different. So we're all fulfilling the mission of the company, but we're doing it in different ways. So this is an example from the Michigan division that I wanted to share of a conversation that, again, is aligned to supporting sales. And then also, too, you can see from the wine stewards group, we've actually created some groups that are cross-company groups that are focused on a particular department, such as wine. So, and I've talked to these folks. I mean, we've gone through trainings. They were part of our pilot, and they know, that a good way to encourage conversation is to ask questions too. So, they're actually pretty laser focused on their goals and these conversations. You don't see like chit chat within these groups. So along the way too, there were some myths that I found, or some assumptions that actually I had made prior to even starting on this project and taking this journey with our company, and they totally got busted. So I wanted to share them with you. One of them, that did really surprise me was that generations define the readiness for social. Time and time again, I was surprised when boomers kind of took it, ran with it, and did it like they had been doing it their whole life, while certain millennials, didn't pick it up the way that I would have expected. So I would say, too, just be aware of that. Don't make the assumption that a particular group or a particular person is going to necessarily adopt it faster based on their generation. The other thing, too, was this common fear that all people would do was waste time. And like I said, within the Michigan group and the other groups that were in our pilot, once they understood that this wasn't Facebook, and why they were doing it, they're essentially laser focused. So the conversations there are very productive. And also, too, the third one, that brilliant IT people will understand the business drivers and value behind enterprise social. Since, it is a digital channel, I made the assumption that all of my colleagues within IT didn't need to go through business assessment process because they would just automatically get it. And then I found out later, hey, that's not exactly the case. So I kind of doubled back, and then I worked with them some more. But that was certainly something, as I look back and kind of reflect on what could I have done better, that was definitely one. Like, I would have spent more time with them up front. And then finally, this isn't easy. So you just can't throw it out there and just hope that it works. But we took the approach of really, again, like I said, working through very specifically with teams, what their goals are and how this could align, rather than doing big adoption drives. Also, finally, really, to make enterprise social networking successful, you definitely need to support a culture of openness, transparency. And I think one thing leaders can do, and that we actually coached ours on as well, was simply leading by example. So, in addition to doing business assessments with teams, we also had executive one-to-ones where we really talked through what they could do. And that definitely has helped as well. So here's just a few stats on our network. Since we launched our pilot in July, we now have 13,000 associates on the network. We didn't open it up to everyone. We had a specific group that we were working with. And we're happy with our numbers now, specifically the engagement numbers. So like I said, we weren't going for massive adoption so much as we were going for value and for high quality. So as we look towards early 2013 to do our formal company-wide launch with everyone and get those big adoption numbers going, that's where we'll be more focused on that. But from one of our surveys, too, that we took of associates on the network, we found that 78%, just really liked it to share displays and ideas. We also branded our network as Yodel. So we call it Yodel because actually Barney Kroger's family actually brought yodeling to America, and back in the day, all the store managers yodeled. No, I'm just kidding. So actually, Yodel is a joyous vocalization, and we wanted a name that would capture the spirit of joyousness, excitement, and kind of creativity that this new form of business communication brings to Kroger. So, again, from our survey, we found, too, that people, one of my favorite comments, actually, was that sharing ideas, pictures, and thoughts from all departments has put the fun back into merchandising. And when I traveled around to some of the stores, I would ask them, hey, how are you currently sharing displays? And they would look at me with this blank stare like, well, what do you mean? So it's really amazing because our stores in Cincinnati, we've got stores from Cincinnati to Anchorage, Alaska, and they have not been sharing back and forth fluidly. So they might see things, put out in our newsletter and our website, but they don't have a place where they could search for them and just find them quickly. So now this actually fills that gap. Another great use case that we found for retail, as you might expect, is display contests. So, we had a display contest for the recent Avengers DVD release, and it was great to see how people got involved with that from across all of our divisions that were in the pilot. And then another thing we did too, we had our GM and merchandising teams pick their top ones, and then we had the entire network vote on what they considered their favorite display. Finally, I just wanted to share with you customer stories. This is a topic that we created around capturing customer stories from across the enterprise. It was something that was done previously in the past through email, where stores were given this, what I was told was a very laborious PowerPoint template to fill out with their stories. But it didn't have a very broad reach. It might get shared within the division, but it didn't get shared across the entire company. So now they're able to post them up. This is one from our Turkey Hill Dairy, and I love the last line too, where he says that hearing things like this about how great their pumpkin ice cream is gives him a great feeling about where he works. So I didn't have space to share all of the comments that came after it, but a lot of it was to do with the fact that people felt good about hearing that. So this is basically another example, and it's very authentic storytelling, and I think it makes associates feel better about where they work and also better about the company. Plus, I think it's a lot more powerful when stories are being told by the people that are actually living them rather than the corporate communications team like myself. So I think you could tell also, well, you can't see the comments from these, but people really would say things like, this makes me proud to work at Kroger, and I'm so glad about it. So that's another positive. So that's our story. We'll have time for questions at the end. Hopefully you have a better understanding really of Kroger, the business, and the value that we see in enterprise social networking. So now I'm going to hand it over to Dustin. We'll talk about SharePoint and the integration.
Thank you. As Andrea mentioned, my name is Dustin Benjamin. I am a collaboration engineer with Kroger. I also functioned as the project architect for bringing Yammer into Kroger from an IT perspective. So with that being said, I'm not going to go into the weeds technically in this. I don't want to put everyone to sleep on the technicalities of SAML. But what I do want to do is I kind of want to paint a picture in terms of where we had to focus, some of the things that we had to do, and then kind of paint a loop essentially of what what the system looks like from a log-in, log-out, deprovisioning perspective, along with some of the integrations, some of the reporting stuff that we've done, because it's all pretty unique. So with that being said, when we think about Yammer, one of the first things we have to think about is the fact that it's a SaaS solution. So we would need to federate with Yammer in some way. We utilize SAML as our federation. Essentially what that does is it allows us to take our directory and allow users to authenticate against that directory. Sorry about that. So it allows users to essentially authenticate against our directory, and a token then gets passed to Yammer, and Yammer says, because you've authenticated against Kroger's directory, we trust you. We trust this token. It's secure, and that token includes email address. Email address is the unique identifier that Yammer uses within their system. So essentially the way it works is corporate credentials go in, it hits our federation box, an email address is then passed to Yammer. Yammer says, we trust you. And that is all fine and dandy, but in an organization the size of Kroger, not everyone has an email address. As Andrea mentioned, there are 340,000 associates. So what we had to do is we had to create a separate, unique identifier and place that attribute in our directory. So by doing that, we created a method by which we could wrap a unique identifier if they didn't have one in the directory and send it off to Yammer. And this is where, as Andrea mentioned, we kind of created a little bit of history because never before were all of these users corporate citizens. You know, they weren't digital citizens, right? They didn't have a voice. But by doing this, we've enabled that communication from the very top all the way down to the very bottom. So it's actually pretty neat, and I've got an example of one instance of that where a user was actually seeking guidance. They were looking for for suggestions, and they essentially said, someone came back and said, yeah, I've got all these ideas, but I want to email it to you. And he said, well, I don't have email. So not only was this just a really great example of where someone could communicate that otherwise wouldn't be able to within the organization, but it's also a really, really good training opportunity because we know that people pass information back and forth within organizations via personal email. And you can see the blanked out part there. That's actually that user's personal email. But what we were able to do, and further down the line where it's cut off, is we were actually able to go back to that user and say, use the direct messaging that's built into Yammer instead of your personal email. So it allows for that transparency that we never would have really had before, right? I mean, we know that people are putting stuff up in Dropbox and all these various third-party services, but when you bring it in and you start to essentially reinforce this particular tool, you can kind of curtail, and it's so much more transparent in terms of what users are doing out there. So with that being said, we've talked about some of the ways that we get people into Yammer, but there's also a big piece of that, which is how do we essentially pull people out of Yammer. So when people leave the organization or we just simply need to remove them, we do have a pretty robust deprovisioning system. So due to company login through SSO and the fact that they hit our internal directory, we can curtail those folks that have been through deprovisioning internally, right? So all of those folks, they hit that external URL, they authenticate, and the system simply won't allow them to pass through, right? Because that directory has them as inactive. Well, but what about the case where users have a session already in process, right? They've got a browser window open, they've never closed it, they're already logged into Yammer. So in that case, we've also included an API call within our internal deprovisioning that actually goes out and suspends their session. So whenever they would refresh their page, any new page load, they would actually be logged out. So one cool piece about that, though, is that it's actually a suspension. It's not a deletion, right? So that user's information is retained in Yammer, right? If I go out, I can search for any information that user posted. I can consume the knowledge that he has within the enterprise or that he's shared within the network. And another kind of interesting point around that, too, is if that user ever does come back or does need to be back in the network in some way, 1 year, 2 years down the road, as long as that user has the same email address and they actually log in through the normal channel, it'll be almost as if they've never left. It's kind of like that Facebook deactivate thing. You know, your stuff's still out there and it's kind of magic and it's a little bit scary. But essentially, it's the same type of thing. That user would pass back in as if they had never left. So that's kind of the login, log out, deprovisioning world. There's also a component to this that is that's reporting, because we want to know who's logging in, who's logging out. We want to know metrics around the network. And it's a pretty unique kind of mentality that we've taken. We do have federation, so the one piece of information that we do pass is email, and that's the only piece of information we pass to Yammer. So when a user signs up, they're able to put in their first name, their last name, their title, all of that stuff, upload their picture. And all of that's fine and well, but we want to be able to look at reporting, and we want to be able to say, we want to pinpoint certain users, we want to pinpoint certain groups, we want to pinpoint locations throughout the country. So essentially what we do is we take that Yammer data and we export it into a system that then takes that data and merges it with various AD attributes, eDirectory attributes. Yeah, we have more than one directory. It merges it with that data, and we can pick any single attribute that we want. So if we want location, title, the sky's the limit. If you've got it in AD, you can pull it back. We compare the email address with all the users in AD, pull that back, and it essentially presents us with a file that we can then slice and dice up any way that we want. And that's really important because when we are in pilot and we're communicating this out to various groups, and we're trying to understand what maybe our communication, what effect our communication is having on adoption, or if certain people are actually joining the correct groups or the groups that we want them to join based upon where they are or their job title or any attribute out there, we can actually go back and we can pull that information. And it's just simply a PowerShell application. And if anybody's using Yammer right now and is interested in that, come see me afterward. I'd be happy to share it. It's a pretty simple little application that just pulls the data and spits it out. Moving on to some of our integration. So Yammer offers obviously an API. They offer something called Yammer Embed, which is essentially a 1 to 2 line code snippet that allows you to place a Yammer application on pretty much any web page, and it functions much like an app. So you have to actually go back and authenticate back to the system. But we've utilized Yammer Embed in a WebSphere portal app. It's specific to a couple different sets of people, but essentially what it does is it goes out, and when they log into this site, it looks and sees who they are in terms of their job title, and pulls a specific Yammer group based upon their job title and displays it within that portal page. So we've also been working with the SharePoint integration quite a bit, and we have a lot of plans in the future for when we move from pilot to production. Right now, we are finishing up a pretty large migration between 2007 and 2010, and we hope that that's going to coincide with the production rollout, so that we can do some really, really neat things with SharePoint. We have a pretty large team site environment, and we auto-provision those team sites. So we have a corporate security requirement to use AD groups, for example. So we have our own customized provisioning process. And some plans include the ability to maybe auto-specify a Yammer group and automatically put that Yammer web part in the SharePoint site at provisioning. So if I'm a user, I could go out and I could request a SharePoint site, and if I already had an existing Yammer group, I could automatically pull that in to that SharePoint site at provisioning. There's a ton of custom development that we've done, and the Open Graph platform is really appealing. I think that there was a session earlier today regarding Jira bug fix and enhancement that was utilized. I believe it utilized Open Graph, and that's just another example of some of the stuff that we'd like to do. We utilize Jira. So one other kind of interesting piece is we actually set up a SharePoint 101 Yammer group. And what that did for us is it provided a ton of transparency into our SharePoint environment. We had a lot of users going out and asking, how do we do this with SharePoint? How do we do that with SharePoint? Bug fix, and it really pushed this sense of transparent accountability for the development team, right? Because 9 times out of 10, when you get a ticket, it gets thrown in some system, and it goes back to a specific team, and it's like that team, it sits there in the bucket for that team, and they work on it. They've got their own SLAs, but it's like it's not transparent, right? When you actually go back and it's out on Yammer for everyone to see, there's just this huge sense of transparent accountability, and we've had a lot of stuff come through Yammer within the SharePoint world that has made its way into our enhancement and bug fix tool. It's really, really been good for the team in that regard. So what's next? As Andrea and I mentioned, we're moving from pilot to production. A lot of those deeper integrations will revolve around that time period. We're really interested in external networks. I don't know if you're familiar with external networks, but essentially they are a subnetwork of your main paid network that allows you to essentially you spin one up, and the key differentiator there is they afford you the ability to invite external people into that network. So in our instance, we may want some of our suppliers, for example. But along with that comes, like any kind of extranet solution, comes the need for some security around that. How do we know if this other person from this other organization is still working on that project? How do we know that this other person in this other organization hasn't moved on and is now working with a competitor, for example? So we've got a couple ideas around how we can begin to deprovision those users. One is email bounce back. So and this works in one scenario, but if I am at company X, Y, and Z and I leave company X, Y, and Z, given amount of time and the email traffic that happens within Yammer that's recorded, we can say if 3 emails bounce back, we automatically want to deprovision this user from our external network. Right? So there is some automated stuff that we can do, but by and large, that's going to be a governance thing.
Which is how we're doing it now. Yeah.
Right. And kind of the final thing that we want to be able to do is email address sync. So right now, if an email address changes within our organization, that email address gets passed to Yammer in the SAML token, and that user would then get a new Yammer account, right? So we want to be able to develop a process by which we can manage all of those ways that email addresses change. So if it's from the HR feed, or if it's from a support ticket, or I believe there are about 6 different ways that an email address can change within our organization. We need to normalize that, bring it all together, and build in some way to report back to Yammer that an email address has changed. Because it's not really a big deal now when you have 13,000 people, because you're only getting a couple email address changes out of that group every so often. But when you have a much broader group, it could certainly become a hassle. So that's what's next. And there's been a lot that's changed since 1883 within Kroger. But we still remain focused on delivering service, selection, and value for our customers. We also know that the world today is very different. We have to become even more agile, adaptive, responsive to both the customers and our associates. To accomplish this, enhancing our communication with enterprise social has really, really been a key ingredient. So thanks for joining us today. We hope it was useful.
So we'd like to open it up to any questions. If anyone wants to stand at the mic and ask us. I'm just curious first from the audience, who already has a Yammer network in their company? Okay, a few. Who is actually considering it from the audience? Just by show of hands? Okay. All right. And is there anyone here from the retail grocery business? Just curious. Did I see one hand? Oh, okay.
I think we had one back here.
All right. Where are you from? Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Well, if there are any questions, please raise a hand and we can get to them. Any questions at all? Okay. Yes.
We currently don't utilize my sites. We decided to focus solely on the Yammer product.
Anything else? Yes, General Mills. Oh. Yeah, so our plan is actually to deploy it to all 340,000 associates, including those that don't have emails currently. So that's a big change, I know, from what some other retailers have done, but that's our vision. Currently, we're finishing up our pilot phase, which we started in July, and we're looking to launch to the company in early 2013, so between January and March. But yeah, that is the plan, and one of the drivers behind that is really that throughout our history, associates from all levels have come up with ideas for products. Like we had one recently, was the bubblegum ice cream. But more than that, we know that since our associates are so close to our customers every day, we really want to leverage their intelligence and what they're seeing in the stores and be able to react to that more quickly. Yeah? Yeah, that is a great question. Because being in the retail industry, there's a good chunk of our people that don't have access to computers, as much as we do. Those of us that work in the offices. So where we really saw value with Yammer actually was in the mobile app. And what we see from our usage on the network is that a lot of the associates in the stores are using it from their Android or their iPhone. And we can track that, so we're aware of it. But that's where I think the future is for them, especially. So also too, we have certain bandwidth issues in some of our stores. So again, for the mobile, it's a much better experience. And so in my communications to the store folks, I tend to focus them in that specific direction. Like this is where you probably want to be. And also too, it's so darn easy. I mean, all they have to do is click, take the photo, and quickly upload, whereas before they were taking photos with a camera, downloading, and then uploading. So kind of a win-win there.
And just to add one more thing, that URL, the federated URL that we utilize, that internal URL that we pass folks through to get to Yammer, is accessible from the outside world. So, from a home PC, from a mobile device, even if they don't have the app, it's completely accessible.
Yeah, but on that note too, and a lot of people ask me this question, we don't require our associates to use this off their regular business hours. We emphasize in our use policy and in our governance that it is purely voluntary. So that's something that we also make clear to the store managers as well. Like, you're not supposed to say to an associate as they're about to head home, "Oh, can you go look this up on Yammer?" That's where we could get into issues. So we manage that through governance and through training, in case that was on anyone's mind. So, yes? Yes?
We did.
Yes, and we so that slide I showed you. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can talk about that. I think we could probably both answer that, but that slide I showed you with the lightsabers and everything, that was part of our of our resistance because certain people tied to certain vendors, and it became a little bit political there. But we did look. I feel like we looked at a broad range of vendors, from Yammer to SharePoint to Jive to even Convos, this little company that we looked at. We ended up settling on either Jam, which, since we have success factors for HR, Jam's integrated in that, and there was a perceived benefit there for the integration to the profiles from the HR systems, which are the source of truth, and the profiles on the social networking. But because Yammer we felt outweighed them in other benefits like the user experience, the mobile, the access anywhere, and being a leader in enterprise social networking, we went with them. But we did bring together a business team. We had folks from retail operations in the evaluations. We had IT teams in the evaluations. It's not like we just ran off and said, okay, we're going to run with Yammer. So I felt like it was a pretty collaborative decision-making process.
We're still standing on the stage together. We're still standing on the stage together.
Yeah, we're still talking to each other. So that's good. And sometimes we actually attend Bon Jovi concerts together. So we,
as I mentioned, we had a pretty large SharePoint user base prior to the decision to move to Yammer for our social networking, and we did move to Yammer prior to the acquisition as well. So it was, obviously it was a bit of a departure in direction, but I think that the acquisition has definitely solidified that decision.
Yeah. Yes? Okay.
Do you want to take it?
Sure. So one thing that we look at that we perceive as a way of telling us whether or not we're being successful is our engagement metrics. So adoption is actually less important to us, and I did talk about this earlier, so it might be a little repetitive for the other folks in the room. But essentially, we wanted a tool that we could see that people are actually using. Our goals are to enable faster access to knowledge and expertise. So we do curate examples where that happens, but we do look at, for hard numbers, adoption and engagement. And then we're all looking at doing some sentiment analysis on the network to help us discover areas where we might need to pay more attention to. So that's something that we're looking at as well. Yes? I'm sorry, can't hear you? Oh, okay.
So there's the option within the network to even if a user deletes information. So if, as a user, I could go out and I could delete a piece of information that I posted, we have enabled the option to allow that user to delete it from the application interface, but it still remains in all data exports. So we can export that data, and we essentially have it. The data never leaves the system.
These are all great questions, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, what's your? From retail to executive. You mean from store associates? Okay. Oh, okay, the most success. So far, I think the majority of successes we've seen have been from the store management. We do have executives involved. Our CEO is really, really good about posting when he's on the road. He works exclusively from his iPhone and posts. So he'll say, here's this picture of such and such. Maybe it's at a competitor, and then the question is, what do you guys think about this? So that's really good. I think we've got a good base there from our executives. We also have VPs of merchandising in our divisions where we're piloting that are very much on board. We found that was definitely key to success, because we did have one division that we wanted to pilot that didn't have the VP of merchandising on board and didn't really progress as well. So that's definitely a key factor, but it definitely comes top down and also bottom up. So from associates and store managers and district coordinators taking photos in the store, that's definitely a big use case, and also where we see big value.
Do you have a story for taking folksonomy, opportunities you get out of Yammer, and rolling that into taxonomy?
I didn't hear you. I didn't hear the first part of your question.
So, for all the content that you're getting from all your folks who are in Yammer, do you have an opportunity to look at the content and see if there's folksonomy in that content and roll it into your term store? If you're using the term store, finding the terms that are being used by the folks out in the field, and saying, hey, there's a lot of value. This is a new term that seems to be showing up in Yammer all the time. Do we roll that into our term story and make that as a corporate data?
Yeah, I think that there's a huge opportunity there. And the reporting system that we kind of built would probably go a long way toward doing that. Within the exports that Yammer provides, we could certainly crawl that and find repetition or whatever you wanted to utilize. And we don't currently have a very mature taxonomy within SharePoint term store. And I had never thought about it in that way in terms of, I'm sorry? I'm not the right person to ask. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's a really interesting idea. I think that it probably has legs.
Yes?
You guys do a great job with customer engagement around the ads that you get sign up for coupon and all that. Is there any plans in terms of taking social to customers?
Taking social to customers through Yammer or through traditional like Facebook, Twitter type of channels?
I guess either. Like Yammer would be sort of implied for getting that.
Okay. Probably not so much through Yammer is our thinking at this point, although, never say never, in this world. So that could be possible. We do have Facebook and Twitter sites for all of our banner divisions and also YouTube, and we are rolling out Pinterest as well. Although currently I think it's just our Simple Truth organic products that have a Pinterest site. So Kroger's been a little bit, behind the curve, I'd say, in the customer-facing social, but we definitely do recognize the importance of it and want to get more ahead of it. So I would expect more e-commerce type of solutions coming to our website. And from our app, actually, our new mobile app, you can take the digital coupons and load them to your card from the app, as well as refill prescriptions, by the way. Are there Kroger customers in the room? I'm just curious. Oh, awesome. Okay, great.
What?
Do you have the app? Okay, just curious.
And one piece to that, too, is some of our best customers are actually our associates. And because of that, we do have some kind of internal communication about new product, for example, or that type of thing going on. And I think that there's probably some value in that as well. And when you have as many associates as we do, it's a pretty large number of shoppers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Do you have any challenges with branding it Yodel and then the application being Yammer?
Yeah. Yeah, that's like our top FAQs. What's the difference between Yodel and Yammer? And so, we do put it in the FAQs simply just that Yammer is the platform and Yodel is our branded Kroger community on Yammer. So, but yes, it does create a lot of questions. But we never get. Sorry, go ahead.
One piece that's helped with that has been the URL that folks utilize to access Yammer, because we're doing the federation, we're doing single sign-on. We can obviously build that however we want. So folks don't even really have to know that it's Yammer outside of the mobile app. Right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes tell them, it's kind of like our Kroger page on Facebook. I mean, Facebook is the platform, but we have our Kroger page on Facebook. And then kind of when I say that, they're like, oh, yeah, okay. This is Yammer is like Facebook, the platform, and then we've got our special community. So making the analogy helps. Yeah? It is cloud.
Yammer only does cloud. It's SaaS, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big step for our company too, because we hadn't had many SaaS solutions in the past. SuccessFactors is one, but Yammer was a big step for us to take. So, yeah. I see a hand over there.
So restrict participation for any of your local participants, maybe legal or finance.
It's open to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The question for those of you that might not have heard it was, do we open up our network to everybody? And the answer is yes. Yes, there's no restrictions. So our courtesy clerks to our executives can use Yammer. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. The question is, how frequently do we use like praise and the badges? So really for groups like the Michigan Division, for example, since one of their top goals for the business was to increase engagement, they do that kind of thing more than other groups. So you'll see frequent praises there. It's not always using the badge, but it could just be a post, congratulations and a picture. So, but definitely using the post is something we do encourage for that. So, good question. Yes? So we had actually looked at Jam as one of the solutions for enterprise social networking before we selected Yammer, and Jam is part of SuccessFactors. That's their version, or at least it was back in early 2012 when we were looking at it. Again, since things change, I haven't looked at it lately, but that's what they called it then.
No, we did not. No. SuccessFactors being a cloud solution as well, we're not afforded the liberty to go in and modify it in any way, really. There's multi-tenancy there and everything else, just like Yammer. To some extent, there may be some ability to provide some low level of integration in the future, but at this time we don't have any.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how you use Active Directory, customer profile database, or your overall solution?
So I mentioned or kind of alluded to the fact that we have multiple directories within Kroger. We do have an Active Directory. However, we currently only have about 180,000 users in that directory. Our federation system actually works off of eDirectory, just LDAP. We aren't using the AD Sync product, and because we wanted to open this up to everyone, the eDirectory solution was a better solution, simply because everyone is in that directory, and we can allow for authentication against that, and everyone can pass through.
And then do you allow folks to set up their own profiles and profile server?
No. OpenID, we haven't really looked at it. Our federation tool and product is pretty mature, and SAML has become such a widely recognized protocol that that's typically been our direction. We have, I think that we have artificially created a couple groups. We certainly didn't replicate distribution lists or any type of grouping structure that was already present to Yammer. We didn't want to move. I mean, I think that it's not atypical to have kind of some sprawl out there, and we didn't want to reproduce a problem from one place just in another, especially something that was as kind of needed to be as organic as social. We've done a little bit of moderation, so like duplicate groups, for example, we'll go out and I don't know, prune sometimes or ask people to say, hey, there's already a group for this. Why don't you? It'd be nice if you just joined that, and if you have some desire to kind of be a moderator, then contact this person, for example. So we have created a few. We've created a small structure, but certainly not anything widespread. So as part of another project, we've done some really granular data gathering around email at various levels. And unfortunately, we didn't have the before picture and an after. I mean, we have an after picture. We plan to gather again toward the middle of probably next year. And that'll certainly be after a company-wide rollout. And it'll be interesting to see. Right now, we're still in pilot. We've targeted it at some specific groups, and it'll certainly be interesting to see. I think that we probably will see a slight reduction, at least,
or more. Okay. So. Yeah, we actually do have several external networks already where we have brought in vendors from external companies, and so that has improved how we communicate with them and also share files, especially large files. So that's been a good use case for us.
Do they get to interact in Yammer?
So they're able to interact in Yammer in the external network environment, but they don't get to see what's inside the Kroger network. And also, we typically only allow selected people from the Kroger network to go into those external networks. But that's something you can configure based on your particular needs. So I think we're going to wrap up a little early, give you 10 minutes back. If there's any questions and you want to stay afterwards, we're happy to talk. But I did want to say thank you to everyone for coming and learning a little bit more about what we do. So thank you.
Thanks.